small businesses, startups in central Iowa. And then we're known for putting on events like the one you're at today. So that is why I get to introduce our wonderful panel up here. I don't know if that qualifies me to introduce these fine ladies, but I did just listen to some of Randy Zuckerberg's presentation, so here we go. I'm going to introduce Christina Moffett, the moderator for today. And she's a very accomplished lady, so I don't know that I'll get through this whole card, but here we go. After working for 10 years in corporate USA, Christina decided she was tired of seeing people with no happiness in their day. Her mission became to find what makes people happy. And the answer, she discovered, was cupcakes and dessert. A beggar since she could hold a measuring spoon, Christina combined her culinary skills with management and marketing experience to create creme, cupcake, and dessert, which expanded from a home-operated bakery to a commercial kitchen in less than a year. From a dozen cupcakes for a single order to 2,100 desserts for the Vice President of China, or 4,000 for Dam to Dam, more and more people around were turning to creme, cupcake, and dessert to find a way to satisfy their sweet tooth and find their joy. She graduated from DMAT, Iowa State University, University of Toledo CBA program, and she not only owns and operates creme, cupcake, and dessert, but serves as Director of Small Business Resources for the Greater Des Moines Partnership. Devotes her time, a lot of her time, to a lot of local boards, and literally like 20 different awards over the years. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Christina Moffett, ladies and gentlemen.
I have to say, this is one of the most, amazing views. I think you would all agree. Everybody's dressed up and in heels and having fun today. And it's just amazing to be with so many amazing women today and meet a lot of new women. We think we know everybody in Des Moines, but it's been a pleasure to run into and meet a lot of new women today. So I am excited that I get to serve on this panel because I've got to work one-on-one with each of these women, and I know a lot of their stories very personally. And so instead of reading their bios, we have some questions that kind of went back to their bios, so I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So today we have Megan McKay, and she's the owner of Peachtree Brewery with multiple locations, so thank you for being here today. And then Margie Alanese, I'm going to skip the hyphenated name, we just had this discussion, owns Farm Her, and she has an amazing journey about highlighting women in farming. And then Whitney Warren with Ivory House Photography and Brand Launch is here today as well. So I'm going to let them do a quick intro of themselves, and then we'll get going with our questions. Oh, you guys.
Good morning. So I'm Megan McKay, Peachtree Brewing Company founder and owner. We started 10 years ago. We're celebrating 10 years this March, so we're kind of the old grandma of the breweries in Iowa at this point, which feels a little strange. So at Peachtree, we started in Knoxville, Iowa. We really built our company as a way to enrich our community. We had an old building, we didn't know what to do with it, and my dad one day when we were in the insurance agency said, I think we should start a brewery. And really we went out and bought a book and rolled our sleeves up and didn't think a whole lot about it, and yada, yada, yada. 10 years later, here we are. 5 years ago, I actually was able to buy my partners out. I left the insurance business and put my full energy toward Peachtree. Since then, we've been able to add 2 new locations, both in Des Moines and Grinnell, and expand our distribution through the state of Iowa and into Nebraska. So we're up to about 12 full-time employees, 30 part-time employees, and full steam ahead. So I'll look forward to answering the rest of the questions today.
Thank you. I am Margie Geiler-Alanese, and my business is Farm Her, and I guess first thing I can say about it was never really supposed to be a business. I was finished with the career that I had been doing for a little over a decade, saw a commercial right after I quit my job. That led me to realize that maybe we don't see enough of the women in agriculture, farming, food, science, you name it, all the things that lead to the food that end on our plate every day, right? And so I started a photography project. This was 7 years ago in April, not quite 10, but I'm gonna get there. And so that photography project has grown and changed over the years into many different ways to share the stories of women through media. So from photos to speaking, to events, to TV, radio, podcast, we share the stories of women who are just like all of you. And we do that in again, many different ways. And it is my pleasure to get to show a little bit of the beauty that they bring to growing food to all of you.
I'm Whitney Warren. I'm a serial entrepreneur at this point, and my mission in the world is to let each of you know that you get to be seen and heard. So all of my businesses fall out of that power of the individual voice. My first business is Ivory House Photography. I moved back to Des Moines 4 years ago, almost on the dot, to start that business. And so I do photography through that business. I photographed a lot of your fabulous faces in this room. And then 2 years ago, I partnered up with Emily Steele, and we created Brand Launch, which is all about personal branding education. So if you were listening to Randy before and you're interested in that topic, I'm all about it. And then we just couldn't stop ourselves. So a year and a half ago, we started the DSM Hummingbirds, which is a community marketing strategy that brings the local voice to your brand or business. So passionate about personal branding, photography, and community, and all things that I do. I'm excited to be here.
All right, Whitney, we're going to start with you, actually. Name a person who had tremendous impact on your life as a mentor to you, and how did that person exactly impact your life?
One of my favorite questions. I am really lucky to have been influenced by an incredible amount of mentors, and so many of them are in the Des Moines community, but the one person I look to quite frequently is my best friend. And she didn't start as my best friend, she started as my boss. So right when I got out of grad school photography, this was 7-8 years ago now, I was living in Rochester, New York. I sent my resume over to a young woman who was running a photography studio, and I said, I think I'm qualified. She hired me, and then for 4 years, I helped her build her business. And I helped her build a portrait studio, and together we learned, and together she taught me so much about what it means to be a female-owned business, what it meant to be strong and powerful and empower other people. And so when I moved back here, I had her as my safety net, and she laughs now every time I call her, and I'm like, so thank you. I just start by saying thank you for the lessons that she taught me that I didn't even know she was teaching me, for the things that she took the brunt of because I made a mistake. And as a business owner, I've learned that I get to take the brunt of the mistakes that we make together. But we're making these mistakes and I get to own it. And I got to say thank you to her repetitively for teaching me how to run a business with integrity and honesty. So that's my mentor.
So Margie and Megan, we talked the other day about peer mentors. Can you guys tell us a little bit about your peer mentor groups that you're involved with?
Yeah, well, I think one of the biggest things I can say to piggyback on that, because I think, does anybody else in here struggle with the term mentor? Like, who is my mentor? Like, have I talked to them about that? Do they know that?
Is it a formal relationship?
No.
Or is this casual? Like, we're not sure what kind of relationship we're entering here.
And likewise, I've had young women say, can you be my mentor? And I don't even know what to do with that, really. Like, I'm like, oh, are you sure? But I think the biggest thing I can say is when I think back over the last 7 years or before that, right, over my professional career, it's those people who are in your circle that maybe have experienced something like you want to experience or like you are experiencing now, and you reach out to them. And I know, looking at both of you, I've done that to both of you at different times, and I think it's just having that comfort level to say, I'm going to connect with this person, and it's okay if I don't really know what I'm talking about. And, they probably don't mind sharing their experience as well, too, because I think that's where we all grow, through other experiences.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm last on this one, because that's probably the area I struggle with the most. I think as women, often we think we kind of have to know all the answers, or if we ask for help, we look weak. Men don't really have that problem, and I think it's something that, as we get older, we need to do a better job of. So I've really worked on that the last few years, and it's, again, not a very formal thing. It's just kind of reaching out and saying, hey, I'm struggling with this, give me some ideas. And then one thing I learned this last year was really making sure you're expanding your circles too, so that you're not just talking to people in your own industry, or you're not just talking to people that are helpful to you today, but who might be helpful to you in the future, so that you're really building those relationships and kind of bridging that gap. And I think you can do that in a really authentic way without it just being, I'm trying to get all your knowledge, but try to add some value to that so that they can add value back to you. But I would say that's something I struggle with.
Awesome. We're going to go to Margie. Your whole business was built on the concept of empowering women. How do you do that in your organization?
Within our organization, it's a unique thing because, again, everything that we do is so very visible. And most of the people who have been on my team at some point or another feel a very, very strong connection to what the visibility of Farm Her is, right? We share the stories of women. We want to make those women feel strong and important and powerful because they are, and through that, I want all of you to see that too. And so I think for me, the most important thing is not just pushing that out, but also realizing that within our group, right? We're all amazing and strong and important. And so it's kind of this sometimes difficult thing to take the vision that we put out in the world and to pull that all the way back in, because we do have to get work done too, right? It's all very fun and wonderful, but at the end of the day, having a team that works well together, that respects each other, and by the nature of what we do, we have had a lot of women on our team. That's who comes through our doors. So just making sure that respect goes always.
And Whitney, your team specifically is all females, and you've been very intentional about growing your females. Can you talk a little bit about why you've built your team that way?
Absolutely. And again, I think that females just walk into my door, but it's been really important that everybody that walks into my organization understands the mission. So a lot of those people have come in through Ivory House. Megan's been with me for 3.5 years now. She literally showed up when I needed her. I mean, this girl started when she was in college, and I could not pay her very much money. So I think about how much she's given me and how much I've been able to give back to her, and that sisterhood that we have created. I mean, she works from my home. This woman comes into my home every day. So that trust and letting her grow and see what she loves to do, and we're getting really specific right now about what makes her feel empowered out in the world and what does she really want to grow in. And I think one of the tactics with anybody that I've hired or worked with or become business partners with is, what are you really good at? What is your passion? And then let's figure out how that adds to the monetary bottom line, because trying to force a square peg into a round hole, I fail at that when I try to force myself into a position that doesn't make me feel empowered. So sometimes that means that I hire more people for more jobs. So my female accountant and my female bookkeeper, and they all have separate jobs in my life.
Awesome. Megan, you started by saying you guys had no experience in a brewery, that you just saw this amazing opportunity for this building. So I can imagine you had a lot of challenges starting that, and something that you weren't familiar with. So talk about the challenges of starting your business and something that you did not know, and how have those challenges changed? What's your biggest challenge today?
Yeah, I think when we started, we were just really excited and buoyed by this idea of we could build something, and we were kind of at the beginning of the craft beer renaissance. People were excited about the products we were putting out, and so even though we didn't really know what we were doing, it was kind of well, let's just figure out one new thing every day. Obviously the first challenge was none of us really knew how to brew beer, so we went out and hired really well, and Joe has been with us since the beginning. We had some challenges with just getting people in. I don't know how many of you have been to Knoxville, Iowa, but we are the sprint car capital of the world, and maybe the Busch Light drinking capital of the world. So just those challenges of getting people to kind of buy into our vision, and that this wasn't this super crazy idea. We could offer kind of a different reality, or some, creative culture in a small town in rural Iowa. So I really felt like the first 4 or 5 years we kind of just were able to ride that wave of adrenaline and excitement of starting a new business, and the market really responded well to us. I would say the last 3 or 4 years have probably been the most challenging, because we started to get a lot of questions about, well, who is Peachtree? What's your future? Our distributors, as we put our products out farther, we're farther from our customer, which is painful and hard, because we just are trusting other people to go out and sell our products. And so that messaging and that brand identity really had to get more and more deep, and that's something I really wasn't good at. I've gotten a lot better at it the last couple of years, but It's, who is Peachtree? What is Peachtree? Why do you exist? Where are you going? And those are tough questions when basically, the past 7 years or so, we've just been able to say, well, we're just Peachtree. Like, this is our people and this is what we do. And we didn't really think a whole lot about it. And so the other difficulty with it was, how do you then make this nice little cute brand statement that's very polished and not feel completely fake and inauthentic and like you're just out selling something that's not real? So we've had a lot of work struggling with that. At the end of the day, we really boiled it down to Peachtree is here to enrich our communities, and we do that through thoughtful beer experiences. And it's something that we've been able to do a lot of work around. Our team's all gotten on board with, really talked a lot about visions and our values, and we've lost some people in the, through that, and that's also really difficult. But as your company grows, some people are gonna go on with you to the next level and some aren't, but you just gotta keep pushing through it, so.
Margie, same question to you, and I know you had to make a hard decision last year. If you can touch on that decision and how you came to it.
Yeah, for sure. So, as I said, we're 7 years in, and last year I had the opportunity, someone on my team pushed me a little bit to go through a program called Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses. And when I first heard about it, I was like, I'm fine, we're fine. The business is running, we're good. I don't need this. But it turns out I did. And I think the biggest thing to that, I'll just say, is taking time to work on your business versus in your business mattered so much at that point. But I kind of held a mirror up in my face a little bit going through this program of where we were at. And I counted up finally the number of nights that I had traveled through the first week of April last year, and it was 48 nights. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And no wonder I feel like I'm like upside down, inside out all of the time. And so, it wasn't just me, it was the business was kind of feeling like that too. We had the most events ever that we'd had going on. We had 9 of our own ticketed events and multiple other ones that we were participating in. And I was speaking, and we had a TV show filming, and you name it, like all these things. And it was great until we stopped and boiled down what's working and what's not. And we're spending all of our time doing something that's getting us this much go, right, on the business, and this much time on something that's getting us way more. So we had to do some readjustment, and it was one of the hardest things because, as you said, as a business, you start this and you have all this momentum and all this excitement, and then you kind of hit a point and you go, I had many people, and I see people in this room who ask me that, what are you going to do? What is Farm Her? I'm like, I don't know. So knowing that about myself and stopping to understand what I wanted out of it and where we could go from there, we had to make a very tough decision to end our events for this year, right? So we kind of cut off an arm, and I lost some team members through that, and we had to let some people go. We then had some people fall off too, and it looks a lot different today, but a whole lot clearer is the really bizarre part to me, where a year ago right now I was kind of going, what am I doing? I'm a sinking ship personally, and so tough decisions sometimes lead to a lot of clarity too. I think it's like the big girl pants, you put them on and you're like, oh wait, I was super scared of that, but actually I did it. We got through it and we're better for it.
Whitney, you have 3 different companies. She's amazing.
Whoops.
But they all have a different culture, really, when you pull them apart. So talk to us a little bit about how you ensure the culture in each one of those and how you kind of pull your vision and your mission down through each one of those companies.
I think the overall culture is that every person who's touching that business, their voice matters. So that is the starting point. And honestly, so the employees get traded between the 3 a lot. So my admin is my admin for all 3 businesses. My photographer and editor, while she's employed by Ivory House, spends a lot of time on Brand Launch and Hummingbird things, just as the nature. She goes where I go. So the culture really goes where I go. But I'm so lucky, not lucky, I've worked really hard to ensure that it's not just the culture of my employees, the people that I pay that are doing the job. So all of my businesses are founded, their whole core is based on the community that supports them. So this is something that I knew in my core when I moved back to Des Moines, is that I knew I could build a really strong business if other people advocated for me. And at some point, my power was going to exhaust myself. I know I can run out there, and I know I have a lot of energy. I have a ridiculous amount of energy. It's commented on frequently, but at some point that stops. And so I needed to know that if I built it strong enough that people would catch me. So really at this point, the culture is empowering the community to do the work for me and with me. And so really making every person that comes in contact with the brand part of the mission and part of the brand mission, so that I'm not doing the job alone at the end of the day.
So a lot of the tasks that are involved in all three of your companies can be mundane. So talk to us a little bit about how do you keep those tasks that are mundane that nobody wants to do, right? How do those relate? How do you communicate that to your team?
Most of the tasks in photography, you think, oh, it's really fun. You get to photograph new things every day. No photographers are in this room right now. I actually photograph almost the exact same thing every time I photograph. It's the same scenario. I love it. I'm in a studio photographing a human in front of me. It's a unique experience every time, but there's a system there. And the systems that fall out of that are so redundant. So anything redundant in my business is something that I hire for. So if I can do it in my sleep, that is or if I am not sleeping because I'm doing it, then that is the time that I hire someone for that role. So editing photos, for example, a lot of photographers keep that for a really long time. Within 6 months of my business, I had hired Megan to be doing that. And it's incredibly repetitive, and what we talk about all the time is, how are we going to make this client feel when they see the photos? What is our mission? How do we treat people? And there's been some really interesting mirrors held up as we've interacted with other brands and other companies, and I've watched my team say, that's not how we do that. Like, we do it this way because we value the feeling on the other end of that. We're not creating photos for money, we're creating photos for a feeling. And same with the community building. How do we make people feel? So we talk a lot about, how do you respond to an email? When do you respond to an email? Like I got some feedback that we weren't always closing the loop, like the thank you email, like got it, check. That little end, that wasn't always happening. So we had a whole conversation about, why do we simply confirm? It might feel like a waste of time, but to the person on the other end of that email, it feels like the detail in the loop was closed and they feel paid attention to. So if my mission is to make sure that everybody feels seen and heard, it means answering that last email, even if it takes that 5 extra seconds and it's not actually necessary in a technical sense.
Yeah. Margie, you're on the road, so your team is here, and your culture really comes across on television in your show. But if you're on the road, how are you ensuring culture back here with your team?
That can be tough, and I won't lie, it's gotten upside down at times, right? And I think part of it goes back to, you can't just rely on you being the whole culture. As you said, you've got to have other people. So that, as we've stepped forward in the last year, has become really important, to be able to have somebody who's here who can be that culture and be that, spread that. But I think the other thing, and I mentioned this before, with Farm Her, like you said, people can see our culture. You can turn it on to your TV screen or on your computer or on your phone or whatever, and that's great. And the people who come through our door, they want to be a part of that culture. But it doesn't always match up, like I said, because there's a lot of work to be done at the end of the day. But I think the biggest thing for me is that we all remember on the inside who we're doing this for and why. And so when you can hear somebody say, you changed my life because of this picture that you took of me, changed the way that I saw myself. I mean, that's my fire, and I try to make sure that other people can see those things, and I think my team does. You get to see those things, whether it's on social media or wherever else they spill back through. It's we're doing good, and it's sometimes we just got to keep that in front of us, because all this stuff happens every day, like the ins, outs, upside downs, fires, whatever, all the things.
Megan, kind of same question for you. You mentioned hiring Joe, who knew beer. So obviously he coming in was a part of your culture instantly, and you needed that to mesh. But you've also got 3 different locations, 3 different cities, kind of 3 different mini cultures within. You mentioned the other day it took 3 times to get a hire right, and part of that was probably culture fit. Talk to us about how you work through that in your hiring process.
Yeah, I think a lot of that goes back to kind of what I talked about figuring out our identity and who we were, what our core mission and values were, which all sounds like really soft work that's not really important to the day-to-day. We've got beer to make and we've got stuff to do. And so it's really hard to step back and kind of get those overarching pieces. But once we were able to kind of get that overarching, who are we, where are we going, how do we operate, it made it a lot easier for me to actually back up. So probably until 9 months ago, I hired every single person in the company, every bartender, everybody. I did all the interviewing, did the onboarding, all of that, which got a little ridiculous when you have locations, each an hour apart, and my managers weren't feeling very empowered for that. So again, through that kind of setting some hierarchy in our company for who's responsible for what, and then making sure that values and mission statement goes down all the way through. It feels a little corporate-y, and it feels a little not like organic Peachtree cool, but it really empowered them to be able to do their jobs, and it really made sure that I could kind of hand that off and say, okay, Jason, when you're hiring a bartender, here's the things you need to look for. The conversation we had the other day, the wrong fit was I really wanted a woman in my production area. It's hard to find women who want to, get dirty. It's hot, it's cold, it's messy, you're working with chemicals, you're packing heavy beer, all those sorts of things. And I think, there are women who can do it, but then finding women who can come into a culture of, 5 guys who are super great and welcoming and all of that stuff, but it's still just, how do you find that right fit that can come in? So again, just a lot of communication and a lot of setting that from the top down, and then I feel like I say it a million times. They tell me, we haven't really heard that before, so I'm sure I'm not doing a great job. There's still some disconnect, but I don't think you can over-communicate that enough.
We're going to stick with you. So literally we had the question of work-life balance on here, and I literally crossed out the word balance because, as you heard, it's lopsided from Randy, and she has an entire book on it. But how do you guys stay on track? Like when you approach your day, because there is no balance. It's never going to go away. We've all got commitments. We've got the friends. We've got family. We've got work. Talk to us a little bit about how you do that. And I know you guys specifically, you and Margie going through that class, have a tool.
Yeah, so the word I've always heard for it is just work-life integration. There is really no balance. It's just how do you fit those two together. I think at the end of the day, I have a 12-year-old. He's going to be off to college before I know it. And so I try to prioritize him when I can. And then, really try to prioritize work beyond that, because that's what's going to be the thing that's going to feed and clothe and send to college and all of those good things. But I think, at the end of the day, the things probably we're really terrible at as entrepreneurs is self-care. I probably I know I don't do very well with keeping up on my friendships. Thank goodness I have friends who are good about, grabbing me and pulling me and saying, you need to go do something. But I think we can't underestimate that either. And so like in the last year, kind of with this whole figuring out who Peachtree was, I kind of have done some of that same work for myself. And it was like, if we're gonna have a cool creative company, what do I need to do to reinvest in myself? And so is it, art? Is it working out? I actually went to like kind of a crazy women's weekend last fall. I'll put a shout out for that. It's the Pollinate Women's Weekend that was really good, and it was kind of nature and art and all of those things. And so I think you just have to kind of figure out how to stop for a few minutes each day, or at least a little bit each week, and just go, okay, where am I missing? And how is that showing up? Or, man, I was really crappy with my marketing guy today. What was causing that? And then, pull back so you can kind of rejigger your life and make sure that, you're taking care of yourself so you can take the best care of your team. But there's no good, easy answer to it.
Margie, being on the road again, you have very high travel times to get out on the farms with these women. How do you balance that, or integrate it, or lopside it during the year?
I mess it up first, and then I look at what I did and how I can fix it. Does anybody else feel like right now, maybe today, maybe this morning when you're getting ready, right, is any one part of your balance out of whack? I will say mine was. Don't feel like good job for all of you who it wasn't.
And you still made it here. Everything worked out okay.
Yeah,
That's what I want to remind you. Everything still worked out.
It's going to be okay. And I think that's the biggest thing, because I've had those times where I was like, what's wrong with me? And then I actually, my husband's like, you're gone all the time. And I'm like, what do you mean? No, I'm not. Wait, I counted it up, and I was. And part of that is, realizing when things are out of whack. And I have to set rules for myself. Literally, if I am gone 1 week, then I made a rule that I will not take on something that next week that requires me to leave, like to go to the airport and leave. Because it just makes everything a mess, right? So I get out of whack, and then I make rules for myself to keep myself more in check. And so it's never going to go away. I've heard it termed many different things, but just embrace it, right?
Whitney, you have a great rule. You talked the other day about paying for self-care, paying for it, versus actually practicing it. Tell my audience a little bit about what that means.
Yeah, so for the first 2 years of growing Ivory House, I did not stop, ever. And I was single, like totally single, like not even dating. And I have no attachments. I have no kids. I have, there's no one at the end of the night that was like, you should go to bed. That didn't happen. And I thought it was all okay because I was succeeding. And I was paying people to massage me, and I was, going to the chiropractor and doing the things, and I don't get sick either, so there was no bodily reason for me to stop and slow down. And then 2 years ago, I threw my back out. Right after my first round of $100 headshots, I threw my back out so bad that my employee that I had just hired had to put my shirt on for me in the mornings when I got to the studio while I was still shooting people. And I was like, well, this is a problem. And so that started so we're 2 years later now, and it is just in the last 6 months that I've really learned the difference between what it looks like to pay for my care. So yeah, you can go and show up and have your energy balanced and get that massage and go get drinks with your girlfriends. But really what is hard is to sit my butt down every single morning and shut my eyes and do my darndest to clear my mind. So I'm on a 73-day run streak with Headspace. Yes, thank you. You should all clap for that. Because it's been one of the biggest, most rewarding challenges of my self-care journey is just how do I make time for myself? So for 3 minutes before you all walked into this room, I went and sat in the corner and I shut my eyes and I breathed in and out. And that is self-care. Reading a book cover to cover. Do you guys do that? I didn't. I hadn't read a book in 7 years. 100% had not read a physical book in my hands for 7 years. I was like, well, that's a problem. And so now I read books because it's the only thing that I can do that I'm not doing another thing. So that is why I read books. It's really not for what's in the books. I don't care. Just give me a book. But that is
great book called Pick 3 that we just heard about. That is actually cover to cover that we could all use. So I'm going to put that plug back out there because it's talking about this. One thing that I've talked to all three of you about is time blocking. Do any of you actually use it? And if anybody wants to explain a little bit about what it is.
I time block in the sense that I hire someone to manage my calendar. I tell her the rules, and then she implements them because I have found that I am not capable. And it is really hard when my entire community, who is also my clientele, also has an intimacy with me. So everyone has my phone number. I'm looking, and a lot of you have my phone number. So when you're using that, and I'm saying, hi, email Amanda. That was a hard thing for me to transition to saying, so she is my time blocker.
I have that too, because I'm terrible at saying no, and so my time gets filled up with everything in the world, and so I've got help to adjust that. But the biggest thing, and I've heard this from you, is this started, I think, maybe late last summer with changes in our team and, when something changes and someone leaves, guess who gets to take over that job again, right? And I was like, I need some actual hours back in my day. And so I started blocking off Monday morning to work on the things that needed to be done at the beginning of every week so that the rest of the week could actually flow and I wouldn't feel like a lunatic. And just blocking that time on my calendar and not letting anything else into it has been amazing. And I actually do get it done. And I actually sit and listen. And so especially for the things that I tend to put off, putting them on my calendar, it like guilts me into it, I guess, right? Like accounting and, you know, some of those planning things that are hard to sit down and focus on. So yes, thank you. Thank you for pushing that. Because
if you guys have not time blocked, look it up. It will actually get hours back in your day.
It does get hours back because you're not being frantic about, you know, when am I going to do this or lending brain space to something that you don't need to lend brain space to.
Right. And time blocking too is time blocking for your family. So if you have children, if you want to see your friends, the 3 things she mentioned upstairs is literally putting those in your schedule and making an appointment for that. Randy mentioned imposter syndrome in her speech, and I think that's something that we all deal with, especially going into entrepreneurs. And again, we don't know everything. How do you deal with imposter syndrome, especially you going to a trade show and people walking up to the booth? Who do they normally talk to?
Yeah, I think, you know, we deal with that a lot. I think it's always assumed, and what she's referencing is, you know, I'll go to a beer festival and I can bring somebody who's been with me for 3 weeks as my new salesperson, and they come up and ask a question and it's directly to him. Or, you know, if I bring Brian, who's my fiance, who has nothing to do with the brewery business, the questions go to him because he is the man and he's the authority figure. And so you just have to kind of politely, you know, figure out how to steer that back, or just, you know, answer the question for them, and then they kind of figure out, oh, that one, she's the one who knows what's going on. But I think in a bigger sense, you know, when we go out and look for investors, when we go out and look for customers, you know, we can bring that kind of imposter syndrome with us. Or I'm just having success because people are excited about craft beer. Or I'm just having success because I'm an anomaly in the craft beer world to be a female-owned brewery, so people pick us because of that. You know, and you can really kind of self-talk yourself into, I'm not good enough, or this is just happening because X, Y, Z. And so I think the way I've really tried to get over it is, you know, one is stop and kind of reflect on it and say, wait a minute, what are the things that I truly have done? And then also, you know, build little successes for yourself. Find ways where you can, you know, show some confidence and then just keep building on that. But it's a really hard thing, and I think, you know, women struggle with that more than men do, obviously, just because we've always been kind of told to sit back and be quiet and, you know, wait for good things to come. And so the other way that I kind of get around that too is by helping the other women in my organization overcome that. You know, and then I think it's this great circle of us building each other up, you know, whether it's making them learn to drive the forklift because all the guys might be gone one day, or, you know, teaching them to go out and make sales calls and do those sorts of things. But it's one that we have to, men aren't afraid to ask, men aren't afraid to be bold. We just need to do that, and don't be scared to get after it.
And Margie, you go on to farms, but you're not a farmer. So
No,
how did you overcome
I
that?
am an imposter. Yeah, well, I make sure people know that I am not a farmer. Like, I think that's really important, right? But here's an interesting thing that happens, and it happens a lot. I call somebody up and I say, hey, you know, someone submitted your name. I love the sound of this. Let's talk more. Oh, by the way, we want to come to your farm and film. And many times the person says, oh, I'm just the farm wife. I'm just the farm mom. And I don't care if you put farm in front of it, or if you put whatever else, whatever you all do in front of it, right? Hearing them say that helps me, that helps me with my imposter syndrome, right? Like, don't do that. And I always tell them, you're not just this or just this or just this. You are all of those and more, I promise you. Tell me what you do. And then at the end of that conversation, it's clear that she's not just this or just, and none of us are just this or just this. And it's hard. Everybody struggles with it. I struggle with it. And I think the biggest thing is, again, like you said, you know, having this people that you engage in this conversation with where you can realize what they're saying it kind of brings it back and puts a mirror up in front of you. But sometimes you just have to be quiet. Like, you know, if your brain says you want to say, oh, I'm just this, no, just stop. Just stop. Don't say it, right? Because it might be in there, but, you know, what you project out matters.
All right, Whitney, we have 5 minutes left, so we're gonna wrap up here. What advice would you give to a woman considering starting her own business? And can you touch on the men build companies? I'll let you finish the rest of that. Men build companies for wealth, women build for identity. Can you explain that a little bit more? That's one of my favorite quotes for her. So men build companies for wealth, women build companies for identity, and a piece of advice that you would give these women on starting a business.
Piece of advice, 2 words to eliminate from your vocabulary: just and try. I am trying. I am trying. You are doing, you are being, you are not trying. So Yoda, hello, the greatest teacher of our world, you do not try, you do. So anything you are trying at, you are likely not fully committed to. And one of the biggest lessons I've learned in the last year is when I feel overwhelmed, it's because I am not committed to my current action, the thing right in front of me. If I'm overwhelmed, I'm not focusing on what's right here. There's a million things out in this universe. I will maybe get them done, I will maybe not. They will fall away based on importance that I have designated. But if I'm overwhelmed, I need to refocus and look at what's right in front of me. And those are the pillars that I live by and try to use when I try. Ooh, I did it. See, guys, so far from perfect. But looking at those, and when I say them, why am I saying them? Our language and what we say about ourselves is how we are living and how we're perceived. The words we use to describe ourselves are what other people use to describe us. We get to decide our own language. Men build companies for wealth because they believe they get to be wealthy. Women build companies for identities because we believe that we deserve an identity. We deserve an identity no matter what. You get one no matter what. You get to also have wealth. So you get to decide that you get to be wealthy if that's what you want, and why not? You get to decide that you get to be wealthy doing what you love and what you're passionate about. It's a mindset shift.
Margie, same question. What advice, as we wrap up, would you give these women in the room?
I would say know what you want. I get that question a lot. What is it that you want to do? And it's a really, really tough question to answer because we have to put ourselves first. But know what you want and then build everything else around that and keep that front and center. And that might change. It will change, right? But knowing what you want first will go so far in having clarity and success in everything else you do.
Same question.
All right, yeah, I guess, if there are those of you out there looking to think about making a change to starting a business, you're going to have to love what you're going to do because you're going to put your whole soul and your whole passion into it. And if you can't do that, you probably won't be successful. Tenacity is kind of the underpinning of entrepreneurship, and it's the thing that keeps us all, pushing forward and going. And so just because you like to read books doesn't mean you should open a bookstore. You have to love all of it. That's kind of, the weird thing about it. And Joe and I talk about that a lot. He loves to brew beer. I don't brew beer, but I love to build businesses and develop people. And so we make a really great team. So figure out kind of what your goals are. And then the other thing I would say, because I think there's a lot of people who are in larger corporations here probably maybe aren't going off onto the entrepreneurial path, but be entrepreneurial even within your companies. And whether you're going out to start something new or you're just working within a company. And when I say be entrepreneurial, what that means really at the end of the day is learn how to identify problems and then just roll your sleeves up and figure out how to solve them and just figure out how to always add value. And that will serve you so well in your career. It will knock down all the walls and all the glass ceilings because you'll just be adding value every day, all the time, whether you're within an organization or whether you're running your own.
Well, thank you, ladies, so much for being here today. We're all around for questions. If you want to pop up and ask us a question in between sessions, and most of us will be here all day. So good luck to you. We hope that you all go out and start businesses because we're extremely passionate about this community and state. So good luck to you all, and thank you for being here today to better yourselves.
One more. Sorry. I have to put in one more shameless plug, but it's for a really good thing. So we were able to work with WOCO to create a beer called Restoration Wit. It'll be available later today. It's a really nice mango-flavored wit beer. And we're donating a lot of the proceeds back to Dorothy's House, which is a great organization if you haven't looked it up before. But anyway, go and try it. Have fun. Thanks, guys.